Dennis Young here, Primitive Substance YouTube podcast. Very special guest today, Tim Blake, all the way from France. Uh, Keyboard synthesizer wizard with some amazing records he did. So, Tim, thank you for coming on.
My pleasure. Welcome to my little world in the countryside.
Okay, great. So, let's start again. How you got interested in synthesizers, and you were talking about before we got interrupted about uh, you know what your interests were in that.
I've always been interested in music.
Okay.
Uh, from being a chorister when I was very young to learning to play the trumpet when I was
Okay.
at school and having a very inspiring trumpet teacher because
Mm,
it was Derek Bourgeois. And if you look up Derek Bourgeois's music, especially for brass, it's uh,
right.
it's the trombone concerto. I heard it on the television the other day. Anyway, um, so I left school very young because I wasn't very good at being at school. You know, it's not really an activity I do well. And I have a lot of interests in music by then, including rock and roll. Yes.
Okay.
Uh, so, as far as contemporary electronic music is concerned, we would hear some Berio sometimes, and I had heard some of Pierre Henry's work. Now,
Okay.
Pierre Henry became a friend of mine later in life, so he's an important person.
Okay.
And Pierre Henry and Pierre Schaeffer is musique concrète,
All right.
which is done manipulating tape, or in fact, before tape in the 50s, they were using turntables and making acetate records and manipulating
Okay.
the records as disc jockeys do today.
Oh,
And
how about that?
there's
I
an
didn't know that.
there's an interesting point there
Wow.
uh, because one of the first mixtures of Pierre Henry's music and rock is Messe pour le temps présent, which was a ballet for Maurice Béjart. Huh? And
Mm.
it was written with Michel Colombier, and it's bits of elementary rock and roll riffs.
Oh, wow.
And one of them, which has got dum 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 dum
Right. Right.
dum dum, got redone and remixed for Futurama.
How about that?
The with Bender and all of that, and what was interesting was that the remix was done by a modern DJ type guy, and of course using techniques that were probably used making the recording in the first place, which
Oh,
is
wow. Right.
a lot. PR is a very important part in the progress of European, I'd go as far as to say French electronic music, and France has very much been in the avant-garde, which is probably why I've lived here all my life.
Okay.
It was very much in the avant-garde of things. So, with that ambiance, classic, as I was telling you, I was already knob tootling for rock bands. Um, This is how I met Kevin Ayers and Robert Wyatt and people like that,
Okay.
because I was knob twiddling. And
Okay.
but you've got to understand that 1963, which is 5 years before I left school, Doctor Who came out,
Oh, okay.
and the Doctor Who theme music, which is not electronics, it's music concrete, it's audio manipulation.
Oh,
Must be said. No
how about
keyboards
that?
involved.
Never knew
Audio
that.
generators recorded and
But,
cut into place on tape. Uh, but Doctor Who music is both rock and roll and electro weird space stuff,
oh,
which I'm oh dear, yes, unfortunately inclined to like. Okay, so uh, I can't underline the importance of Doctor Who. Now,
how
I'm
about that?
sure if you're talking to any of the Pink Floyd, they're going to say the same thing, or they're lying. I mean, this was our generation.
Right, right.
You know, kids in 1963. When I did English literature,
Hmm.
uh, um, we had a specialist subject which was science fiction.
Oh, okay.
And this is where I read War of the Worlds by Wells, Brave New World by Huxley,
Mm,
1984 by Orwell, Robot by Asimov. Now,
right.
all these titles have, this is what got our generation going. You'll notice if you analyze Hawkwind's time with Calvert, for instance, all the songs are quotations from this time.
Okay.
You know, uh,
Interesting.
and I do realize that leaving school at 16, I must have gone to a very advanced school. In fact, I know I did.
Right.
Very privileged, studying music with Derek Bourgeois at school. That's a privilege already. And it seems that other people, like Calvert was a few years older than me, but he got the same list of reading. It's sure. So between the books and
Yeah.
Doctor Who, we were all primed, and it's, I was younger in that generation.
Wow. How about
Uh,
that?
in as much as that,
And when did you get your
yeah,
first? When did you get?
you'll find me working with people 10 years older than me a lot.
Now, did you start mixing? Were you engineering bands like
Yes, yeah,
at
yes,
shows?
absolutely, yeah. And I actually had a mixing desk. You see, one of the bands I was very closely attached to was High Tide.
Okay.
Now, they didn't go on to make it big, but I would say High Tide was a heavy rock avant-garde version of the Mahavishnu Orchestra 5 years earlier.
Wow.
You know,
Never heard of them.
uh, very heavy guitar, electric violin, bass and drums, and they played fuck loud. Beep, and it was necessary for me to have a feed on Simon's violin and get it into the PA system, which would in those days have been just reserved for voices, you see.
Oh, right. Okay.
The PA. And I brought a mixer in on the thing and was beginning to, and then I did work in studio too. When I was 17, I was an apprentice to a recording studio. And that's when I learned the technical side of what I do,
Okay.
And of course, actually, one of my big musical interests throughout the last 55 years,
Right.
that's quite large, on and off, has been Hawkwind. And
How about that?
Hawkwind, I opened the door on Hawkwind when I was setting up my sound system for a High Tide gig.
How
and
about
they
that?
wanted to,
Wow.
they wanted to come and gate crash, and I should have told them no, but
Right.
being me, I said, why not? I'll try and
Yeah.
get some, and that was the beginning of Hawkwind. And a few years ago, I walked off stage at the Royal Albert Hall with Dave and
Wow.
realised that one had been going on for 50
That's
years.
amazing. Wow. And they're still
You
playing, right?
know, yeah,
These,
yeah, yeah. I was going to go and see them in France, but it was a long way away. And
right.
we're having troubled times in France at the moment, so I don't necessarily want to travel. But
Right.
uh, yeah,
That's something.
yeah. He's built yet another lineup, and it sounds rather good because um, Hawkwind had become a little bit too computer
Okay.
dominated, and although they're still using click, that's all, and that's the way it should be.
Now, they were
You
big
know,
where in England and Europe. The US, they weren't as popular, I don't think, Hawkwind, back in the day. Were they? Did they? I
in
don't think they had
England,
a big
yes.
following, did they, in the US?
Oh, yes, in England and in the USA too.
They're, they were really big.
Uh, yes, I think so. Yeah, I mean, not as big as Lemmy when he left.
Right.
No, that was massive, wasn't it, Motorhead? But
Oh, yeah.
it's another world. But I'm very lucky because of the people I associated with. I've had an insight in all sorts of different musical worlds.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Now, how did you meet? So that's interesting. How did you meet David Allen?
Well, this may sound really stupid, but the phone rang
Oh,
and I picked it up. And someone said, "Can I speak to Tim Blake, please?" And I said, "You are?" And they said, "Would you like to come to London and meet David Allen?" And I said, "Who? Don't you know David Allen?" I said, "No." From Soft Machine. I said, "Yeah, well, I know Soft Machine. I was
right.
with Robert 2 weeks ago and with Kevin about a month ago, but I don't know David, so I'd better come and meet him then,
Hmm.
And so I went to I went to Marquee Studios.
Okay.
Now, with hindsight, 50 what? 3 years later. Excusez-moi, Jean-Claude, je suis occupé, je suis en ligne, je peux pas te recevoir. Huh? I had my door open because it's
Oh, it's
nice, but
okay.
that was my neighbor,
Okay.
my neighbor coming round, okay? And so I go to Marcus Studios, right? Now, as I said, with hindsight, David, shall we say, had a very, very particular way of doing business.
Oh, okay.
And I think I walked into one of these occasions, right? But what he said to me, he said, "Right, I'm not making a Gong record.
Hmm.
We could make a Gong record. We're ready to do things, but there's been a problem with the record company." Now,
Okay.
when you've known David as long as I have, this is something you hear quite frequently. There's been a problem with the record company.
I'm sure.
And so he said, "So I'm not making a Gong record. I'm making a David Allen record." I said, "Well, that's good. And what's it all about and everything?" And finally, you see, David was a music concrete person too,
Okay.
right? See, we've still not got to synthesizers.
Oh,
But
all right.
David David was a music complex person too. And what he had an amazing edition of pieces of recording made on the radio during the 68 rioting in Paris.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah, and it is quite,
Oh,
and he was having trouble. Like he had invited friends to play on a record. He hadn't written anything.
oh, wow.
That often happens with David. They played, I remember, and it was Robert singing, not David. They had a version of Memories.
Hmm.
Do you know this song?
No, no.
It's a Hugh Hopper song.
Oh,
But
okay.
when you look into it, you discover that years later, the same band of Crooks had Whitney Houston singing it, and it was her first song. And
Oh, wow.
it's worth $1 million. Believe you me, it's
That's
worth $1
interesting.
million. But it's interesting when you know that
Yeah.
they did a benefit to bury Hugh Hopper. So, someone else must have got involved, as usual. But he had this notion, which was Stone's Innocent Frankenstein, and his
I know that song.
Voyage in the Land of Flip. And they'd run some improvised group playing, and David with a songbird, Stoned Innocent Frankenstein, right? But what he really wanted to do was flood the thing with this tape edit.
Oh, wow.
And I spent 2 days having great fun with David and tape recorders and getting bits
Oh
on the
my gosh.
multi-track and other bits, doing it by hand and doing buttons. And by the time we got to the end of this, he said, do you want a job?
So you got the
And I
job.
said, with pleasure, yeah. And he said, but you're going to have to come and do some of this with Gong, And I said, yes. Okay. Pause. Rewind. 1970. Right? We've made Hawkwind into a band in 1969. We got them as Brand X. We got them as Hawkwind Zoo, and then it got to Hawkwind.
Okay.
Now, we have Dick Mick playing with an audio generator. When I think of it, why we didn't have a theremin,
Right.
Back then, I just don't understand. But because we'd all heard the theremin. We'd heard it in all those 50s films.
Right.
And Clara Rockmore playing the theremin, it had gone round. But more particularly the Secret of Planet X, Y, Z, whatever, would have had theremin in it, And so what? But anyway, Dick Mick was playing an audio generator, just twiddling the buttons.
Okay.
And when Hawkwind signed its first record contract, I was hanging out with Dick Mick a lot at the time. And all of a sudden, the box arrived with a VCS3 in it. And I knew I was going to have to have. I knew I was going to have one too, right? And so we walk out of the Marquee Studios, David Allen and myself,
right?
And they give us these invites. We said, "What's this?" And he said, "There's a special evening going on in the club, the Marquee Club, which is kind of the home of rock and
Oh,
roll.
yeah, I'm sure.
And we said, oh, that's very good. Who's having a private evening? They said, just go in, you'll see.
Okay.
You'll like it. And we walk in, and it was the Rolling Stones having a party before closing down and moving to Ireland for tax reasons.
Oh, how about that? Wow.
And they had the mobile out the front and
Oh, man.
video in there. I've seen a bit of it on YouTube, and we were getting sticky fingers before its time
Okay.
with the sax section.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that must have
You
been
know,
great.
and it was quite a good fun evening. And I
Huh.
went home, and the next morning I met David in the airport,
Mm.
and we went to France.
Oh, okay.
Now, several things happened when I went to France. One is when I got off the plane, there was a really strange person at the bottom of the steps.
Mm.
And he looked at me and he said, don't worry, I'm an aquarium too.
How about that?
And that was Blumdido Bad de Grasse, or Didier Malherbe, as you like, who is a lasting person in the life of music,
How
yet
about
another
that?
style completely different from anything I'd ever come across before.
Wow.
I've met the saxophone of Nick Turner in Hawkwind, but I hadn't met a saxophonist. And Didier was one, he's a master of music. Nothing more to say. He's one of those, the first opportunity, I went back to the UK and sold my PA system and bought my first synthesizer.
Oh, how about that?
And I came back to Sens, where we were living as Gong. And it wasn't going to be a given thing, but people knew I was, from now on, I was studying the synthesizer,
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I've got it up. I've still got that one upstairs. I mean, it's, one of these suitcase synthesizers. And as it happens, someone who I knew before joined Gong at that point, because one of David's problems is because his music was so shaky, he had trouble having drummers.
Okay.
And they would go and come and go all the time. I believe you were talking to Charles Hayward once, I mean, I never even met Charles Hayward, or perhaps once like that,
In and out,
but
huh?
drummers would be coming and going. And David's Gong never had its drummer, unfortunately for him. But we solved the problem later. And Pip arrived, and Pip, you can't have Tim playing synthesizer, man, that won't do, So I went,
Right.
So I was dealing with Gong until we'd recorded Continental Circus.
Okay.
And then I went and did something else, playing synthesizer. And I spent the summer of 71 being a hippie in the French countryside, which I'm quite good at, actually.
Right.
I think I've done my studies on that subject. And after doing that, I went to Paris. And by the time I arrived in Paris, I was accompanied by Michel Tucu-Seigneur, who was Béjar's dance partner.
Oh, okay.
And on my way to meet Pierre-Henri.
How about that?
And after that, there was a time I was demonstrating the synthesizer in Paris because I'd arrived with the first one, you see. And it caused quite a thing. And I actually sold one to Pierre Henry, and if you look at the official obituary photos of Pierre Henry, you see an EMS synthesizer in the background,
Right.
which I don't think he ever touched. I think
Oh,
he was
wow.
just being nice to, you know, I think he was just being nice to buy one to help me on in my career or something. But that was an interesting thing, you know, and seeing Pierre Henry live
Oh, I'm
mixing
sure.
tapes for Béjar. I think he would have liked the sampling world.
Hmm.
He would have liked it. He would have been very good at in the sampling world.
I'm
Pierre,
sure.
you know?
Sounds it.
Oh yes, completely. It was his thing, you know. Now, so 1971 Christmas, I'm in Paris, right? Now, winding back, what else happened in 1969?
French Revolution. Was there a French Revolution
Yeah,
then?
68. No, but
68.
69. I mean, Hawkwind was created. We also got Switched on Bach and the Moog.
Okay.
You know, right, it's parallel with the little VCS3, but it's a serious step forward, you know, because Moog had been at it for years before getting his thing out. And you'll probably find that Carlos had been working for years doing Switched on Bach. It's very precise. And then you're getting straight after that, you've got Clockwork Orange.
Oh yeah.
Now
Wendy
so,
Carlos was on that.
Yeah, Carlos. Yes, Carlos. Yep. Yeah, I didn't qualify a first name because it changed.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're talking about Dr. Carlos, yes, who is a very great musician, both in multi-track work.
Yep.
And doing it on a synthesizer, you know, and he's probably the best. And when you get the Beethoven.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
anyway, it's such a terrifying film. I walked out of the cinema like someone had been kicking me in the stomach. You know, but what marvelous violence the music is. You know,
yeah, what a movie.
So you know, synthesizers here to stay, and I've got the first one in Paris. I've become very popular now. Okay.
How about that?
And the next thing I know, I was in Japan, not actually playing the synthesizer, though I brought it with me, but with a French pop star, because my other little hobby was playing guitar and harmonica in blues groups before I actually started my own career. So I was already, when I started going psychedelic, playing something similar to what David calls gliss guitar. And
oh yeah, of course.
And I like the mouth organ.
There you go.
And I was in Japan playing rhythm and blues mouth organ for 6
How
weeks
about that?
when I was 20, and that was just bloody great, you know. And then I came back with some money and my own tape recording, because I bought tape recorder, a Sony professional tape recorder in Japan, which lasted me for years, despite going on the road with Gong, because it became my ecosystem. It became my ecosystem, because we didn't have the kind of echo box we needed. Though Binson was a beauty. but you couldn't do the stereo ping pong echo associated with Crystal Machine. And then in Paris, we started making tapes as Crystal Machine with my friend Fifi, who unfortunately died this time last year. But
Oh, sorry to hear that.
well, he had a good number of years behind the belt, so he wasn't going to be complaining.
Right.
But
What about
this,
when you signed with Virgin, right? You recorded at the Manor, right? Some of your records.
yeah, but wait, because this is an important point, actually.
Sure.
In the 1972 period, when we started recording me, now some of this has got onto this compilation from Cherry Red.
Oh, okay.
And there is some unreleased music from the Crystal Machin period. They said 1973. It's in fact 1972.
So I got to pick that up. I don't have that record. I got to get that.
But they haven't yet, and I'm hoping they will, released that thing as a thing of its own. It's 1 hour of music which we were duplicating on cassettes. And now this is important because we hadn't released about the first 100 before I had David on the telephone. Said, "What do I hear? You're in Japan and you're playing gigs. You better come over here." So by the summer of 72, David is soliciting me to make a record called Flying Teapot.
Oh, okay.
And he said, "This is going to be an opportunity for you to meet this new record company I've found."
Oh, okay.
Which has done the link with your question.
Right.
When you sign it, well, the first thing you have to know, so we made yet another Gong lineup,
Right.
with David, with Didier, with Julie,
Right.
with Christian Trich playing guitar and slowly fading out,
Okay.
and Francis Mose playing the bass. And they had Rachid Horry playing the drums, but Rachid was getting very, very, I've seen this happen with another drummer too, psychotically digressive. And so in the end, he's not making any noise at all, just moving his... And
that's funny.
So we had to get Laurie Allen, who's one of David's friends, who's always stood in when David was...
Oh, great drummer.
Really good drummer too.
Yes.
Because I've had Laurie playing with us in the Angels Egg U period, and playing after Pierre is not easy. That's all I can say.
No. He never got the respect he should have. He never got the respect he should have gotten as a great drummer, Alan. He was just really great.
But he still is, probably. Although I haven't heard him play, and he's somewhat older than me. I sometimes feel quite an old man. But yes, it's true. But, the only people, I'll be quite honest, it's not very nice what I'm going to say, but the only people who have gained respect, who've worked with David, have gained respect by themselves.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what that means. It's a fact,
Oh, okay.
I can talk about Steve, you can talk about me, you can talk about Didier, who's the biggest star of us all,
Oh, yeah.
He makes he makes gold record jazz records. Oh, you do
Yeah,
it, you know.
he's
In today's
fantastic.
world, making gold record jazz records, you know. Yet you could talk about careers, but this is all because they've made a career for themselves outside of Gong. Other members of Gong fade away in the worst of circumstances, really. You know, it's weird. But so we've got this band, and to get to your question, we went
Right.
to the Manor on the 31st of December 1972,
Wow.
and our session started on the 1st of January. And yes, walking into the Manor on the 31st of December and having champagne squirted at you in a water pistol was not an experience they've warned me about.
Okay.
But being myself a well-educated English public school boy, I knew how to join in the fun.
That's
And you know, they were in the Manor, you know. Yes. So your next question. When
Did
we
you-
met, we went to the Manor. Yes.
Now, did you write all the songs there, or they were already prearranged, or was this like
No.
this record here? Was this one of them?
What are we
Was this-
talking about? Flying Teapot? Oh,
Yeah, the Gong. Yeah, Flying Teapot, all
no,
the Gong
no, man.
era.
Right. There is no Gong trilogy.
Oh, okay.
I mean, only in David's head. And because he had sold the idea of Gong trilogy to two different record companies at the same time without telling anybody.
No, okay.
But what happened with Flying Teapot is, right, we had a set, right? We released Live at Lyon for Record Store Day. We released Live at Lyon, which is recorded the week before going into the Manor.
Oh, okay.
And we stopped for 2 weeks. You know, we stopped for Christmas, then we went to England. You know, and we had the Flying Teapot set. You know, we've been playing it since the summer. You know, it's the best way to do these things, in my opinion. Why many groups first record the best. In the same way as Camembert Electrique was the Gong set when I first met Gong.
Oh, okay.
And it could have been recorded before. As it happens, it was recorded late 71, beginning of 72. I would gone by the Gong house and David played me the mixes. He said, "You'll like this."
There you go.
And he was right. I did. It's the best record David ever made. You know, I mean, David made. Much thanks to Christian Trücher for the great riffing, for the rhythmic bliss. But it's a beauty, you know. But it's hard to say that Flying Teapot is a suite to Camembert Electrique because it's not the same group.
Right.
No, and it's not the same writers. Now, David is very generous with himself about writing music, right?
Oh, okay.
Which I didn't discover till later when these things became available online.
Oh, boy.
And then, oh boy, as you said, yeah, that's all you need to say. Oh boy, you know. Do not believe this guy was benevolent. And so you know, he had got a riff out of Francis Moe's, which, let's face it, yeah,
Oh
wasn't
yeah.
going to go very far, but finally it did the job. You know,
Yeah.
he
Oh
did
yeah.
have his songs. He did have the other song. I think the TikTok. I don't know who wrote that. It's David and Gilly, but uh, the Araby Sawyer bit is when everybody's playing with Didier, and yeah, when
Right.
you play
Right.
with Didier, you play with Didier, you know, and uh, it's a good album. And then once we were in the studio, David was coming up with expressions which, oh, there seems to have been a problem with the record company.
Oh boy.
And when you're in the studio in a
Yeah.
foreign country, in obvious, because we're in England, that's not the time to have a problem with the record company.
No, that.
Anyway, now there was a whole kind of farce going on because at the same time, Gong was richer than it had ever been
Hmm.
because the
Right.
of
Right.
Camembert Electric
Yeah.
had
Great
been
record.
the generic on the news for a year.
Oh wow.
And someone was making a lot of money,
Someone, right?
but yeah, but curiously not members of the group. And then
No,
at
that's
a
not right.
certain point, yeah, no, I agree. And then at a certain point, the manager Bob comes along with some money, and he's kind of paying session fees to some people and not to others. And people are getting more and more annoyed in French, and I don't speak French at that time very well. Problem solved, see, since. But at the end, I start hearing people say, well, if you're doing it like that, I'm leaving the group. Oh, that was David.
Right.
And, you know, and Gilly and the manager. And in the end, Gong was me and Didier.
How about that? Hmm.
And they had this big row about money when they shouldn't have been at all.
Right. Right.
And we were to learn other rows were going on in the background between one of David's record companies and the other. He managed to get to pay for the recording, you know, and i.e. Virgin. And this is getting weirder and weirder. And at a certain point of time, just before the end of the month, we had Steve who had come down to do. Well, he had come down because we were inviting him to join the band. And we were
Right.
in the studio, so you said, come to the studio. I think he actually does a rhythm guitar track that he doesn't play, you know. And we make a rendezvous with Steve at the Gong house, you know, and we get straight back because we had no bass player, we had no drummer.
Oh wow. Oh.
We possibly had a guitarist coming next week. First thing we do, when we get to the house,
Yeah.
there's a guy emptying a drum kit out of the back of a car. And I say, hello, can I help?
Yeah.
He said, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm the new drummer. That was Pierre. You
How about
know,
that?
right. As soon as he heard we had a problem, he just zipped straight in. And well, basically, we had to start a new group
Hmm.
with a new management, with a new everything.